The Impatient Fisherman. Nestled in a gentle green valley, as if cupped in a giant's hand, lay the village of Oakhaven. It was a cheerful jumble of whitewashed cottages with thatched roofs the colour of honey, each with a puff of smoke rising from its chimney and a garden bursting with hollyhocks and roses. The heart of Oakhaven, its very lifeblood, was not the village green or the little stone church, but the magnificent pool that lay on its edge. They called it Willowmere. Willowmere was a wonder. Its water was so clear you could see the smooth grey pebbles on its floor and watch the tiny silver fish darting in and out of the cool green weeds. Ancient willow trees, from which the pool took its name, drooped their long, graceful branches to kiss the surface, their leaves whispering secrets to the gentle breeze. The villagers of Oakhaven treasured the pool. They drew their drinking water from its purest depths. Their children paddled amid shallows on hot summer days, and the women would bring their laundry to wash on the flat, sun-warmed stones at its edge, their chatter as bright and cheerful as the birdsong in the trees. The pool was also teeming with plump, speckled trout, and the villagers, in their wisdom, took only what they needed, ensuring Willowmere would provide for their children and their children's children. One bright Tuesday morning, a newcomer arrived in Oakhaven. He was a fisherman named Silas, a man with a face as grizzled as a badger and a frown so permanent it looked as though it had been carved into his features. He was not a bad man, but he was a man in a hurry. Patience, to Silas, was a virtue he simply had no time for. He saw Willowmere not as a place of beauty and life, but as a challenge, a larder to be emptied as quickly as possible. He strode to the water's edge, threw down his basket with a clatter, and cast his wide net into the placid water. Then he sat on a mossy stump, tapping his foot. He waited for 1 minute, which felt like an hour. He waited for 5, which felt like a day. He could see the trout shimmering below, but they were leisurely and cautious, showing no interest in swimming into his trap. Useless, lazy things, he chunted to himself, his impatience bubbling up like stew in a pot. I haven't got all day to wait for you to make up your minds. A selfish, foolish idea began to form in his head. He looked around, found a heavy, jagged stone, and tied it securely to the end of a long, coarse rope. Right, he muttered, a grim smile touching his lips for the first time that day. If you won't come to the net, I'll bring the net to you. Plunging the stone into the pristine water, he began to thrash it about with all his might. He beat the water violently, churning up the soft silt and mud from the bottom of the pool. The crystal clear water immediately began to cloud and darken. Great brown plumes billowed outwards, choking the delicate water lilies and turning the beautiful pool into a murky brown mess. The terrified fish, blinded and panicked by the commotion, darted wildly in all directions, and several swam straight into the waiting net. Just then, Arthur, the retired schoolmaster, was taking his morning constitutional. He was a kindly man, with spectacles perched on the end of his nose and a great love for Willowmere. He saw the dreadful scene unfolding and hurried over, his brow furrowed with concern. "Good heavens, man! What are you doing?" Arthur asked, his voice full of disbelief as he stared at the spoilt water. "You are making the pool dreadfully muddy." "I'm fishing," Silas grunted, who was just starting to haul in his now heavy net. Barely gave him a glance, "and this is the quickest way to do it." "But this is the water we all drink," Arthur protested, pointing with a trembling finger at the brown sludge spreading across the surface. "The women do their washing here. You cannot simply ruin it for your own gain. Please, I must ask you to stop." "I'll stop when my net is full," Silas retorted rudely, turning his back to the old man and giving the rope another furious stir, sending a fresh wave of mud across the pool. Arthur's shoulders slumped. He saw that words alone would not be enough. With a heavy heart, he turned and walked purposefully back towards the village. He didn't shout or raise the alarm, but went quietly to the bakery, where Elspeth was pulling a tray of golden brown loaves out of her oven. He went to the forge, where Thomas the blacksmith was hammering a glowing horseshoe into shape. He spoke to the mothers who were now standing by their doors with empty buckets, wondering why the water was no longer fit to collect. A few minutes later, a small crowd made its way back to Willowmere. It was not an angry mob. Elspeth the baker led the way, still clutching a flour-dusted rolling pin in her hand. Thomas the blacksmith walked beside her, his large leather apron on and a small hammer still in his grip. Behind them came several women and a few older men, their faces not angry, but deeply sad and disappointed. They carried no weapons, only the tools of their daily lives, and the shared understanding that their precious pool was being harmed. They stopped at the water's edge and simply stood there, in silence. Silas, busy with his work, did not notice them at first, but then a strange quiet fell, and he looked up. He saw them all, standing and staring. He saw Elspeth with a rolling pin and Thomas with his hammer. He saw the sad eyes of the mothers with their empty pails. He saw Arthur standing at the front, his expression of profound sorrow. A cold knot of fear tightened in Silas's stomach, but it was quickly followed by a hot flush of shame. In their silent, unified presence, he suddenly saw the full scope of his selfishness. This wasn't just a pool of water, it was their well, their laundry, their playground, their peace. He had treated their shared treasure like his own private puddle. Slowly, his face reddening under his grizzled beard, he let the rope slack. He reached into the murky water and untied the heavy stone, letting it drop with a soft thud onto the grass. He pulled his half-full net from the water and, without a word, opened it, letting the flapping, terrified fish escape back into the cloudy depths. He turned to the villagers, and for the first time, his voice was quiet and unsteady. "I am sorry," he said, looking at the ground. "I was not thinking. I was impatient. I am truly sorry for what I have done." Arthur stepped forward, his expression softening, his voice gentle but firm. "The pool belongs to all of us, my friend," he said. "It gives us so much, but we must care for it in return. You may live as you wish, but you must also let others live. That is the way of Oakhaven."
Silas nodded, finally understanding. He had learnt a lesson that day far more valuable than any fish he could have caught. that to live amongst others is to share not just the land, but the responsibility for it too.